Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. It is conference championship weekend. Doing the Big Ten game here. Penn State, Oregon at Lucas Oil. Let's do it.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
All right, like I said, we got Penn State, Oregon. Ducks are laying 3.5 here. Total sitting at 49.5 across the board. Let's take a look at the pie charts. According to the data, action's coming in pretty heavily on one side here. Over 95% of the tickets, over 95% of the money. But as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this one. We'll start with the Penn State offense. This is an offense that wants to run the ball first. They're 29th in rushing frequency so far this year. And if you look at their numbers on the season, it looks pretty good. 23rd in yards per carry, 16th in success rate per rush, 18th in effective rush. They're also very efficient throwing the ball as well. I mean, we're talking about the Big Ten championship game. Obviously, we're just going to see green across the board on both sides of this graphic. Oregon's defense elite across the board as well. But if you look specifically at Oregon's numbers against the run, you can say, hey, maybe the Ducks are a little bit vulnerable here. Maybe Penn State can run the ball. I mean, you take a look at the matchup for the Penn State offensive line. They're 25th in line yards, 39th in stuff rate. Oregon's defensive line, 82nd in line yards, 114th in stuff rate. So, okay, maybe Penn State's able to generate some push here and get the run game going. On the season, they're averaging over 5.1 yards per carry, over 49% success rate per rush, over 194 rushing yards per game. Here's the problem. Penn State has played 6 games this season against run defenses in the top 52. And the reason I cut it off at 52 is UCLA is number 52. So they've played 6 games against run defenses in the top 52. They didn't run the ball very well in those games. Under 4 yards per carry, 44.3% success rate per rush, just under 139 rushing yards per game. Look at those numbers in comparison to the right side of this graphic. Penn State's other 6 games against bad defenses. So you can see it's a little concerning here. Penn State did all their damage on the ground against really bad defenses. The times they saw decent defenses didn't look nearly as good. And if you look at the last handful of games for Oregon's defense, they're playing fine against the run. Just 3.04 yards per carry. Success rate down at 39%. Success rate per rush. Under 99 rushing yards allowed per game. Yeah, Washington's in there. That's an offense that wants to throw the ball. I mean, Maryland is an offense that wants to throw the ball, but Michigan's in there. Illinois has been running the ball recently. Wisconsin, we know they can run the ball. So at first glance, you might think Penn State's able to run the ball on this Oregon defensive front. But when you take a closer look, you see Penn State never seems to be able to get the run going when they see these tougher defenses. Oregon, definitely a tough defense. If you look at Oregon's game logs, I mean, they got run on by Boise State. It was like 3 months ago. Other than that, Purdue was able to run on them, kind of a flat spot coming off the Ohio State game. I mean, this is a solid run defense, so I don't expect Penn State to be able to do much on the ground here. So what do we think about the matchup for Drew Aller? Will Penn State be able to throw the ball in this game? Well, Drew Aller's been pretty solid this year. I mean, these numbers aren't bad. 9.4 yards per attempt, A+ turnover-worthy play rate. He's protected the football. Not a ton of big downfield throws, but A- QB rating. Drew Aller's been pretty good this year. And what I like about Drew Aller is we just mentioned how the Penn State run game doesn't seem to show up when they play tough defenses. Well, that hasn't been the case with the passing attack. In Penn State's games against top 50 defenses, the passing numbers are fine. Over 8 yards per attempt, over 53% success rate per dropback. So when Penn State plays these tougher defenses, yeah, they struggle to run the ball, but Drew Aller and this Penn State offense, they have shown us that they can throw the ball. Pretty much the Ohio State game is the only exception. I've become a believer in Drew Aller. That USC game, they were down at half on the road on the West Coast. He was excellent in the second half of that game. Also on the road in Minnesota, he was making throws. So this is not something I expected to be saying about Penn State's offense, but I trust Drew Aller in the passing attack more than the run game. And here's the thing when it comes to Oregon's defense against the pass. Check this out. This entire season, they've played 2 games against passing attacks ranked in the top 25. In those 2 games, 9.7 yards per attempt, 46.1% success rate per dropback. That's Ohio State and Washington, by the way. So the 2 times Oregon saw a top 25 passing attack, which Penn State definitely is, they struggled against the pass. You look at Oregon's numbers against the pass on the season, it's like a top 10 pass defense. But both times they saw good passing attacks, they were thrown on. I think Penn State's going to throw the ball in this game. Not to mention, Oregon runs a lot of man coverage, 28th in man coverage frequency this year. Look at Penn State's passing numbers against man. 3rd, 9th, 1st, and 4th. So, yeah, like I said, I like the matchup for Drew Aller. I think Penn State's going to make throws in this game. But then we flip it over to the other side, and can we count on this Penn State defense to make stops? We know it's an elite defense, but this Oregon offense just looks flawless, honestly. That Ohio State game was really impressive. On the season, Oregon's 5th in yards per play, 5th in success rate. Penn State's defense, 5th in yards per play, 9th in success rate. So this is truly a battle here on this side of the football. Dillon Gabriel, as I'm sure you know, having an excellent season, over 3,200 yards, 8.7 yards per attempt, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Not a ton of big downfield throws, just a C in big-time throw rate, but protects the football, makes the throws. A+ offensive, that's his PFF grade, A- QB rating. So yeah, Dillon Gabriel having himself a hell of a season here. And unlike the Oregon pass defense, remember we pointed out, Oregon's pass defense looks great, except for their 2 games against top 25 passing attacks. So unlike their pass defense, they've been great even against top 25 defenses. In their 3 games against top 25 defenses this year, passing numbers are fine. Over 290 passing yards per game, over 51% success rate per dropback, 9.23 yards per attempt. So the Ducks' pass defense has shown us they're vulnerable against tough competition, but as far as Dillon Gabriel and the Oregon passing attack goes, they're showing up regardless. Elite competition, bad competition, they're showing up. Now, obviously, when you're talking about the Penn State defense, you have to mention the pass rush. 9th in pressure rate, 28th in sack rate. This is a very good pass rush. Oregon's offensive line has been fine in pass protection. That being said, we have seen Dillon Gabriel under a little bit of pressure here, specifically in that Michigan game. He was pressured on 42.9% of his dropbacks. He was actually the 16th most pressured quarterback in college football that week. So if Michigan was able to beat this Oregon offensive line, Penn State most certainly can. That being said, Dillon Gabriel's elite at handling pressure, an A+ turnover-worthy play rate, B+ QB rating. So even if Penn State's pass rush is able to win some of those battles, Dillon Gabriel's going to be fine. He knows how to handle himself. He's a veteran. So really not worried about the Penn State pass rush. If there's one offense, if there's one quarterback that's able to handle it, it's probably Dillon Gabriel. Also, just like Oregon, Penn State runs a lot of man coverage, 11th most in the country. Oregon, great numbers throwing the ball against man. So Dillon Gabriel should be fine here. I expect Oregon to be able to throw the ball in Penn State. Now, when it comes to Oregon running the football, in my opinion, this is where you can find some value on Penn State. Oregon's got great rushing numbers on the year, but specifically in their road Big Ten games, it hasn't looked nearly as good. 4.03 yards per carry, 149 rushing yards per game, 46.1% success rate per rush. And it's not like they played Ohio State, Iowa. Their road Big Ten games are UCLA, whose defense hasn't even been very good this year. Purdue, that's the worst defense in the Big Ten, one of the worst defenses in the country. Michigan and Wisconsin, okay, I'll give you those. But there's a couple really bad defenses in there. In their road Big Ten games, this Oregon rushing attack didn't look all that great. So against Penn State, who, by the way, nobody generates push against, they're 3rd in line yards, 2nd in stuff rate. I don't expect Oregon to be able to run the ball. But the question is, does that even matter? Because like I said before, I like the matchup for Dillon Gabriel. So where does that leave us in terms of placing a bet? Well, I expect both quarterbacks to have some success. So I'm liking the over here. Get 49.5. I like it. Give me the over. I also think this one should be 3, not 3.5. So I may also bet Penn State. So my favorite bet is over 49.5. I also like Penn State plus 3.5. If you want to go over the website, you can see all the bets I currently have open. Catch the live shows. Remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.